So we don't call it fake news anymore. Fake news has been diluted to the point that it doesn't mean anything. We call it misinformation and disinformation. And there's a cool third word that all of this House Hippo nonsense leads into of malinformation, which we'll get to, because that seems like one that's not as understood and is increasingly threatening in a lot of ways to all of us. So I'll give a very basic definition, and then I was hoping, Nina, we can maybe do some examples, Diane, as well. Basically, misinformation, disinformation, both are just fake. It's fake information. It's wrong. They both have the same outcome. It's just that's incorrect information. But misinformation was shared by people who thought it was true. And disinformation was shared by people who knew it was not true and shared it anyway. Very similar to the difference between manslaughter and murder. It's a matter of intent, really. And we've talked about that as well. Does it matter to even distinguish between these when the result is the same? And, I can't answer that, but I do imagine that a murderer would answer differently than the victim. So, I bring up definitions and the idea of like legitimate institutions, including news outlets as well, like releasing official documentation as like not enough to determine whether information is high quality or whether you want to consider it or factor it into your opinion.
First of all, I love the intensity of manslaughter versus murder. I'm like, oh, we are
It's like
serious about misinformation
serious.
and disinformation. Yeah, so what you've brought up, we actually in our book call like the whole and not just us, like it's a part of the discipline in information studies. We call the whole like situation we're in information disorder. And that's where misinformation
Yeah.
and disinformation fall into. And yeah, you defined them accurately. So I will share some examples. Um, the first one is a personal example, and it's about forest fires in Canada, which have anybody who lives in Canada knows that these have been a serious issue for many, many years now. I think we're getting up to like a decade or more. Also for international audiences, I know that Australia has had issues, the USA, these are prevalent everywhere. And so I fell for some what I believe to be misinformation in 2023. I had planned a trip to Banff with some friends, which is in Alberta. And Alberta is a place where wildfires are like quite rampant every year in Canada. And I was scrolling through my TikTok and somehow it had figured out that I was going to Banff. And I was scrolling and a video of Banff literally like ablaze and like an animal like running away from the fire and like, people shrieking and stuff like that in the background showed up. And I've been to Banff, so it was like what the video was Banff. Like I know what it looks like. I've been there before. And I immediately texted my friends who I was supposed to go on this trip with, and I was like, "Trip off. We can't go. Like Banff is on fire." And to my credit, there was also like Saskatchewan was socked in by smoke. Canada was socked in by smoke everywhere. So, anyway, my friends eventually convinced me, like, Nina, that is not Banff. Like, it's fine. We can go there. And I realized that it was either an old video that had been reshared or something else. I can't really speak to what else it might have been. But I'm going to assume it was like an old video from a long time ago that was reposted, and I'm going to call it misinformation and assume that the algorithm combined with someone accidentally resharing it had landed it in my lap and caused me to like have a panic, maybe not go on my trip. That I think everybody would agree with me that that example isn't like particularly dangerous. Like me needing to change my trip plans or not wanting to travel somewhere is not like personally dangerous to me. So this misinformation example didn't like cause me harm in any way. Which leads me to disinformation. Another thing that happened in 2023 is we had a lot of people in Canada who were spearheading conspiracy theories about fires, so same topic, forest fires, on their social media accounts. And they were claiming that the government was starting the fires as a way to convince people that climate change was real. So the idea behind this was these social media influencers, I don't know if they were considered influencers or not, these people online were posting videos of fires saying, Government of Canada, started this fire. They want you to believe it's climate change, but climate change could never have possibly done this because, like, it doesn't exist, obviously. And even if it did exist, it doesn't cause fires. And so this is like a very, very much so an example of disinformation. Like it's taking something that they know not to be true and putting it out there into the world and trying to get people to not support climate change action and get people to not engage in that conversation or participate in anything to stop it. And then we later find out that one of the social media people on social media who was posting these um, was actually starting fires in the forests of Quebec. And he actually pled guilty in early 2024 to 14 counts of arson, one of which was arson that put human lives in danger. And like hundreds and hundreds of people had to evacuate their homes because of fires that this person had caused. Um, and I bring that up because he was one of the original posters of the government is starting these fires because climate change because they want you to think climate
It's just
change exists.
not enough evidence of
And then
climate change.
yes, yes, and then he was the one who was starting some of the fires. He did not, like, by any means start all the fires that had happened in Canada or even in Quebec that year. Like, 2023 was one of the worst years for fires, but he did some of them, and he pled guilty and has been found to have been responsible for this. So that I hope that helps you identify the difference between misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah, I think so for sure. Chris, do you get it yet? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, that's a very dedicated disinformation.
Mm,
Only was he saying that the fires were being deliberately set. He deliberately set them and then said it was the government who did it.
mhm.
That is and that is
That's a job
really
I can't
It's an extreme
go.
start
example
fires like that.
for sure. Yeah.
Actually, well, I mean, maybe.
But yeah, that's to me why like this is the question because misinformation can be the sharing of deliberate disinformation. So this
Mhm.
is where Alexa's question is, does it matter? Uh, I guess the motivations perhaps do matter, but I do find also that you can confront someone with the facts and still they won't change their mind. They'd rather look like they're right than actually be right.
Mhm.
And sometimes I feel like that's a problem in my own personal interactions sometimes.
I'm not convinced that the distinction matters. False information is false information. For the general public, you need to verify that what
Yeah,
you're saying is accurate. But for like scholarship and academia and the people who study it, that's where we start to want to differentiate between
right.
the different things. And then malinformation is
Mhm.
sort of the third prong of what is specifically information disorder. And Diane is much better at describing it than I am.
Ooh, I want to hear it.
So I will let her.
Yeah. So I think, like you had said, Alexa, it has changed a little bit. At the beginning, when we first started, malinformation was just kind of like information that maybe is changed or um, released in some way to cause damage. And now, more and more, as we're seeing this more often, and how it usually ends up being used these days is specifically with leaked information. So this is just like information that's mostly true, but then leaked at specific times where it can help the purposes of whoever's releasing that information. So you can like leak emails to just cause an information storm and then muddy the topics of the day, or you can leak like very private information so that it negatively affects someone. And that's the way we're seeing it more and more.
Would like doxing be part of that? I mean, that may be true information, but it may be malicious information.
Leaking information, it would depend on the intent. Like if the intent was just to leak information to cause havoc, I don't know that I would call that malinformation. What do you think, Diane?
I don't know. Yeah,
It
in those
depends.
examples, I think it'd be pretty targeted, right? If you're
Mhm.
releasing,
Yeah, that's
like, it's not
true.
like a data breach, right? It's not a data breach where they just take everyone's information and then sell it to a third party. This example would be like you're targeting someone and you're releasing their home information and you're releasing personal details in order to, yeah, basically have a negative effect on their lives.
Mhm. Well, I can pull
And so it could be,
malinformation back into our fire example, if that would help.
Please do.
yeah, do
Oh,
it.
So, yeah, so if we assume that malinformation is real information that is slightly altered or misinterpreted to cause harm, once
Yeah.
our arsonist from Quebec admits that he started all of these fires, what then happens is the climate change deniers grab that and they start creating memes that have a picture of his face and then say the face of climate change. And then they start saying, see, we told you it's not climate change. This guy is an arsonist and he started the fires. So arsonists start all the fires. So they took this like true thing that happened and then they used it to continue this campaign of climate change denial.
Imagine missing the mark that hard and still accidentally being right.
Yeah, and then when you actually do look at the facts of it, the actual amount of forest fires that are intentionally caused by arsonists is 967 hectares. This is in Canada, whereas natural fires caused by lightning is over 4 million hectares. And
oh,
then human ones that are caused by humans, but not arson, is about 38,000. So that would just be like you
And
left your
gender reveal
campfire
parties.
going, or right. You blew
You
something up
have
with
to
a
set a
firework
forest
or
on
something.
fire if you're gonna
Yeah,
reveal your
yeah,
baby's gender, obviously.
yeah. So if you look at the actual facts that are published by forest fire protection agencies, that's what you have to get to eventually. Like if you are a person who's looking at this and going, "Well, wait, is it arson? Wait, is it the government? Wait, is it this guy? Wait, is it this other thing?" Really what the person needs to do is go back to the actual facts and figures and data and see that less than 1,000 fires are caused intentionally by arsonists and more than 4 million are caused by lightning strikes.